I thought I understood how life threads worked until the night one fought back. I wasn't supposed to feel fear or mercy or anything at all. But when I pulled the wrong thread from the wrong man, I learned the truth. Some lives aren't meant to be taken because they're not human to begin with. I've been able to see life threads since I was a little kid. I always saw them as stardust, long, entangled threads trailing after strangers on the street. My job was to steal life threads for wealthy clients. Harvey, a recent NYU graduate, had a life thread so long, I was tripping over it, struggling to stay cloak and dagger. Admittedly, Harvey's thread was beautiful, a trail of stars tangled around his spine, separate threads branching out behind him. He was in high demand. You're following me. Twisting around, the man himself was standing behind me, smirking. Harvey had dark tousled hair, like he hadn't slept in weeks, amused eyes drinking me in. But his life thread illuminated all of him, setting his veins alight. I could see every individual strand entangled around his heart, threaded through his brain, a burning orange light sparking in his iris. I found my voice, my gaze glued to stray pieces of thread wrapped around his ankles. I had a moment of weakness that I was trained to suppress. Your backpack is open. I nodded to his spilling books. Wait, really? He rolled his eyes. Sorry, my head was in the clouds. The guy was grinning, his life thread glowing brighter. I pitied his naivety. Can you, check I haven't lost anything? He hopped into the alley, and I followed him. Harvey crouched to pet a stray cat. I saw my chance. Pulling my gun from my jeans, I stuck it in the back of his head. Life thread is alive. It's the beating heart to the human body. So, I had to treat it gently. Knees. I shoved him down, and he flung his hands in the air. Are you fucking serious? He hissed. Just take my MacBook, dude. The hard part was removal. I told him to lay on his front, and straddled him, pulling out my scalpel. A single incision to the nape of the neck, and there it was, spider-like tendrils already bleeding from the entrance point. All I had to do was pull, and Harvey was gone. I'm sorry, I whispered, ignoring his cry, his body contorting, when I tangled my fingers around the thread. Pull. It came out like a loose strand of clothing, coming apart, unraveling, and I watched that glow start to darken, to go out. It wasn't until I had a handful, when I realized its color. In the veins, it looked like stardust. But this, whatever this was rotting, dark, and wrong, threads tangled and tied together. I could hear soft individual screams, cries for death hanging onto each one. Suddenly, I was being slammed against the wall, cool breath ticking my cheeks. Sharp points grazed my neck, his tongue teasing my throat. His laugh was hysterical, his life thread already mending itself, igniting in his eyes. Oh, I thought, when his teeth penetrated, and my own life thread dripped down my skin and dissolved. So, that's why his thread was so long. Because it didn't end. Because it fed. I felt the warmth drain from my skin as something invisible tugged at my spine, a sensation like a thread being unraveled from inside my bones. His grip tightened, not with force, but with possession, as if he had found something he'd been searching for all along. When he pulled away from my neck, I expected blood, real blood. Instead, faint motes of dimming light shimmered down my collar and vanished into the alley floor, dissolving like dust into the cracks. He watched every flicker. You shouldn't have touched mine, he murmured, his voice soft, almost pitying. It doesn't like being interrupted. I tried to breathe, but my lungs felt wrapped in cold wire. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, my weapon forgotten on the ground beside me. I had stolen hundreds of life threads for people who didn't deserve them, and never, not once, did a thread fight back. They thrashed, strained, screamed in their own way, but they always broke. Always. Harvey wasn't breaking. Harvey wasn't unraveling. Harvey was restitching. His thread pulsed, glowing brighter than before, snaking out from the wound I'd carved in his neck. The strands wound upward, curling around his jaw like vines, flickering with sparks. What are you? My voice cracked. His smile widened, warm and cruel all at once. Hungry, he said simply. Always hungry. I staggered back. My legs weak. The life thread inside me, my own, felt loosened, unanchored. I could feel it now, the same way I felt my pulse. A tremor under my skin, a trembling ribbon woven through my chest. I had never felt it before. Not my own. I only ever saw others. But now I felt it. And it felt as if it were slipping. Don't worry, he said, stepping closer. If I wanted to end you, you'd already be gone. But you pulled mine, so now we're connected. The word hit me harder than the wall had. Connected. He reached out, and I flinched, but he didn't grab me. He only brushed his fingertips down the air in front of me, and my vision warped. Behind him, behind me, behind everything, I saw lines, thousands, millions, threads tangled through buildings, tied around strangers, gleaming, fraying, shimmering in the air like constellations. But mine was dimmer than all of them. You feel that? Harvey asked quietly. That's your thread unraveling. Just a little. Enough to remind you what you took from me. A beat. His eyes softened, no, deepened, as if something ancient was staring out through them. Enough to make you listen. I swallowed hard. Listen to what? To the truth, he said. To what life thread thieves are really dealing with. To what you've been stealing all these years. I shook my head, my breath uneven. I know what they are. Residual spirit. Life force. Potential. It's not. It's not just that, he interrupted gently. It's pieces of people. Memories. Pain. Joy. Regret. Futures they never got to reach. You think wealthy clients buy them for longer life? My silence was answer enough. They buy them, he whispered, stepping close enough for the light in his throat to illuminate the space between us, because they want the strength of others' suffering. The resilience. The trauma. The centuries threaded into a single human soul. A chill ran down my spine. You've been tearing apart lives, he said, to feed those who already consumed too much. And you never even asked who, or what, might still be attached. He tilted his head. Some of us don't die when our threads are stolen. I didn't know if he meant it as a threat or a confession. But I did know one thing. He wasn't done with me. Not even close. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The pain was sharp, yes, but it wasn't the bite that terrified me. It was the sensation that followed, a slow, deliberate siphoning, like fingers slipping inside my skull and plucking at something tender. My vision flickered. The alley blurred into streaks of ink and light. I reached instinctively for the scalpel I'd dropped, but my hand trembled uselessly against the ground, my strength emptying out of me as if someone had split open the bottom of my soul. Harvey was crouched over me, teeth still sunk into my neck, his breath cold and sweet like fermenting fruit. His fingers dug into my shoulders, pinning me as easily as if I weighed nothing. I'd been trained to handle struggling targets, screaming clients, even life threads that fought back, but nothing, absolutely nothing in my years of harvesting prepared me for prey that didn't die. He lifted his head slowly, mouth stained with something shimmering, not blood, but the liquid form of my life thread, glowing and dissolving before it even touched the ground. His eyes were fever bright, pupils blown wide, heat radiating off him in waves that made the air distort. That, he whispered, voice trembling with manic delight, was rude. I opened my mouth to speak, but only a rasp came out. My pulse skittered dangerously, skipping beats, my limbs numb and heavy. I could feel it, my life thread recoiling, confused, retreating deeper into my spine like an animal seeking shelter from a predator it had never known existed. Harvey leaned closer, gripping my chin between cold fingers. You tried to rip me out, he murmured, as if explaining a simple lesson to a child. Do you know how long it's been since someone tried that? His grin widened, unhinged. I forgot how much it stings. He released me, letting my head thud against the bricks. My ears rang. Somewhere above me, the cat he'd been petting hissed and darted away. The air smelled like dust and cosmic rot, the scent of damaged threads. I forced myself up onto my elbows, fighting the nausea, the disorientation, the static crackling under my skin. What are you? He laughed, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, smearing glowing residue across his cheek. Not like you. Not like them. He motioned vaguely toward the street, toward the humans walking past unaware that two supernatural creatures were bleeding in an alley behind them. I've lived too many times, he continued softly. Too many threads knotted into one. Every time I should have died, I didn't. I just rewrote. Resealed. Wove myself back into the pattern. Resealed. Rewove. The words hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't human. Or maybe he was, just not bound by mortality. A thread devourer. An old story. A myth whispered among harvesters. A creature whose life thread grew with every life it consumed, not by killing, but by absorbing, stitching others' threads into its own until it became an amalgamation of countless souls. A being that could not die unless every stolen thread was severed individually. I didn't want to believe it. But his thread, it made sense. The stardust glow that twisted into rot. The screams entwined within it. The grotesque length. The way it mended instantly. Harvey crouched again, and I flinched, but he only tilted his head, observing me like a scientist studying a weakened specimen. You shouldn't have come after me, he said gently. But I suppose that's why your kind exists, right? You take what you're told to take. You harvest what they point to. And you never ask why. His fingers brushed my neck, tracing the bloodless wound where he'd bitten me. It stung, but the pain was distant, buried beneath the terror pulsing through me. I won't kill you, he said. Not yet. I'm curious. His eyes gleamed with something predatory and childlike. How long until your thread grows back? How long until I can taste the rest of you? I tried to crawl backward, but he caught the front of my shirt, pulling me upright with effortless strength. Oh, don't look so scared. I only took a little. Enough to mark you. His voice dropped to a whisper. Enough to follow you. Follow me. The words froze my blood. He leaned in, lips grazing my ear. Run home, little thread thief. I want to see where you live. And then, just as abruptly as he had attacked, he let go. I stumbled backward, falling onto my hands, gasping for breath. When I looked up, he was already walking toward the mouth of the alley, humming a quiet, discordant tune. His thread dragged behind him like a comet's tail, vibrant, monstrous, growing brighter with each step. He didn't look back. Not once. But I felt his thread brushing against my own, tugging at it gently like a leash. And I knew, with a clarity sharper than fear, that my life no longer belonged to me. It belonged to him. For a few seconds after his teeth sank into my neck, I couldn't tell whether I was still breathing. Pain and cold rushed through me at once, two sensations twisting together until they were indistinguishable. My vision flickered. My limbs felt weightless, as if the alley around us were falling away, leaving just the two of us suspended in a dark, starless void. I could feel something being pulled out of me, not physically, not like when I extracted a thread, but deeper, beneath skin and muscle and bone. My life thread, usually warm and shimmering with soft gold, began to spill down my collarbone as a thin ribbon of light. I felt it unravel as if fingers were plucking each strand loose from my spine. He held me pinned effortlessly, his breath ghosting the wound, his grip ice cold but steady. I expected him to kill me. I truly did. I'd accepted it in a detached way, like a criminal resigned to a sentence they always knew was coming. But he didn't finish the bite. He paused. His mouth lingered at my throat, his exhale uneven, and for the first time since the attack began, I felt him shake, just slightly, like he wasn't fully in control of himself. You shouldn't have touched it, he whispered. His voice was wrong, layered, distorted, as if someone else were speaking through him or alongside him. shadows curled at the edges of his words. When he pulled back, his eyes glowed brighter than before, burning a molten orange that spiraled into darker hues, like embers sinking into ash. He looked feral. Starved. Yet somehow painfully aware. My knees buckled, and I slid down the wall, clutching my neck. My fingers came away coated in a smear of dissolved stardust, my stardust, already evaporating into the air like dying fireflies. Panic rose in me sharply. Without my life thread, I would wither. Not instantly, but inevitably. People without threads fade the way abandoned houses do, quietly, unnoticed, falling apart from the inside until one day the structure simply collapses. Harvey crouched beside me, his posture unnervingly calm now, as if he hadn't just slammed me into a wall and bitten into my life. He studied my shaking hands, then the remnants of my thread flickering along my skin. Your kind always thinks you understand life thread, he said slowly, wiping a smear of dark dust from his own collar. You steal it. Cut it. Sell it. Pretend you're above the consequences. My breath caught. My kind. Hunters. Extractors. Thread thieves. We were discreet, well-paid, disconnected. We weren't supposed to feel remorse, fear, empathy. We weren't supposed to bond with marks. But as Harvey leaned closer, that smug grin gone, his gaze filled with something ancient and incomprehensible, I realized he wasn't anything like the marks I'd handled before. What are you? I managed to rasp. He tilted his head, the glow in his eyes pulsing. Hungry. He said it without shame, without menace, like hunger was a simple fact of existence. He pressed 2 fingers against the wound on my neck, and I winced when my remaining thread recoiled at his touch. You were supposed to die, he murmured. But your thread tastes different. Old. Familiar. My heart lurched painfully. Threads don't have taste. His smile returned, sharper this time. Yours does. I swallowed hard. The alley suddenly felt smaller, colder, as if shadows were crowding closer around us. My instincts screamed to run, but I could barely stand, much less fight someone who survived full thread extraction like it was a mild inconvenience. Harvey straightened, brushing dust from his jeans in a casual, almost bored gesture. I don't know why you can see life threads, he said. But I do know this, you should have never touched mine. He turned as if to leave, then glanced back, eyes dimming to a softer glow, something like curiosity, or recognition, flickering in them. There's something wrong with your thread, he added. It's missing pieces. Maybe that's why I didn't finish you. My breath stuttered. Missing pieces? Threads could tangle, fray, rot, yes. But missing? What does that mean? I whispered. Instead of answering, he began to walk away, hands in pockets, shoulders relaxed, as if we'd just had a casual conversation. The stray cat from earlier trailed behind him, weaving around his legs like it belonged to him now. Before he turned the corner, he paused. You want answers? He called over his shoulder. Don't die before you find them. Then he was gone, leaving only the faint shimmer of disturbed stardust in his wake. I sat there for a long moment, too stunned to move, listening to the echo of his laughter circling the alley like a warning. My neck throbbed. My chest ached. My life thread, what remained of it, flickered weakly beneath my skin, pulsing with a strange new rhythm I didn't recognize. Something was wrong with me. Something had always been wrong with me. And now something else knew it too. His bite wasn't supposed to feel like that. I'd been grazed before, scratches, accidental cuts, the kind of surface wounds you get when life thread extractions go wrong, but this was different. This was deliberate, precise, almost intimate. A sharp sting followed by a flood of something cold sliding under my skin. My vision blurred for a moment, colors bending into one another, threads twisting in on themselves like frightened animals. I could feel my own life thread recoiling, struggling to retreat deeper into me, but it was too late. His touch had already reached it. Already tasted it. He didn't drink. Not exactly. It was more like he inhaled, and the thread, my thread, responded. Pieces of it flared, dimmed, flared again in a desperate rhythm that reminded me of a dying fire trying to stay alive. Harvey pulled back, his lips shimmering with the faint glow of what he had taken. There was blood there too, but it wasn't red. It was luminous, like liquid starglow catching moonlight. He smiled, teeth stained with my existence. So that's what you're made of, he whispered, almost reverently, brushing his thumb across his lower lip. Interesting. I tried to push him away, but my limbs didn't obey. They felt heavy, disconnected, as if my body was no longer sure how to belong to itself. I slid down the wall, breath stuttering, fingers clawing at the concrete. Harvey crouched in front of me, tilting his head like he was examining a strange artifact. His eyes glowed brighter with each passing second. I watched his life thread knit itself back together faster than anything I had ever seen. Where moments before there had been frayed, rotting strands, now new ones sprouted, healthy, vibrant, impossibly strong. I realized then that I had not weakened him at all. I had fed him. You really don't know what you've been doing, do you? He asked softly, almost pitying. Stealing threads for people who barely understand what they're buying. Cutting lives short because someone richer asked you to. You think you're the monster in the story, but you're not even close. My throat tightened. What are you? Harvey chuckled low, the sound vibrating through the alleyway like a second heartbeat. He leaned closer, gripping my chin between cold fingers and pulling my face up toward his. I'm hungry. Those 2 words shouldn't have chilled me the way they did, but they slithered through me like ice water. He wasn't threatening me, not exactly. He wasn't rushing, or snarling, or lashing out. He didn't need to. His calmness was the weapon. My life thread pulsed weakly behind me, struggling like an animal caught in a snare. Every movement felt like someone dragging barbed wire across my spine, but my body finally responded enough to let me shove myself a few inches away from him. Harvey watched, amused, not at my attempt to escape, but at the realization dawning in my eyes. You pulled on something you shouldn't have, he said, voice dropping to a whisper. Not all threads belong to people. Some belong to other things. In the dim light, I saw it, the faint shadow of something larger behind him. A structure of tangled threads that didn't follow gravity or shape or logic. They pulsed, each beat releasing a low, distant wail like a faraway choir begging to be silenced. They were old. Older than the concept of life itself. And they were his. You saw them, he continued. I knew you did. That's why you hesitated. I swallowed hard. I didn't. I didn't know what they were. No, he smiled. But you felt it. He stood, brushing off his jeans casually, as if we'd just bumped into each other on the street. The shadow thread mass shifted behind him, stretching out like a living cloak. It made the air vibrate. It made my heart skip. I tried to speak, to ask him what he wanted, why he chose me, what he intended to do with the piece of my life thread now glowing faintly in his palm, but the words died in my throat. Harvey looked down at me one last time, eyes bright with an emotion too complex to name. Hunger, certainly. Curiosity. Amusement. And something else, recognition. You've been cutting lives from the wrong end, he said quietly. You pull from people. I pull from fate. He turned to leave, stepped slow, calculated. Wait, I croaked. What happens to me now? He didn't look back. That depends, he said, voice echoing through the alleyway like a verdict. On how much of yourself you're willing to lose. And then he was gone, threads trailing behind him like a comet tail disappearing into the dark. But I wasn't alone. My life thread, what remained of it, had begun to move on its own. Harvey didn't let go of me for a long while. His grip was iron, unyielding, claws pinning me to the alley wall like I was nothing more than an insect he'd finally lost patience with. My blood slid down my neck in slow, hot lines, pulsing in sync with the sting of his bite. I could feel my life thread unspooling behind me, fraying where his teeth had torn through it. I could feel parts of myself, memories, instincts, thoughts, fluttering loose like embers blown from a dying fire. But what terrified me wasn't the pain. It was the realization that he was savoring it. That my unraveling was a kind of amusement to him, something he'd been waiting a long time to taste. He finally stepped back, leaving me half collapsed against the cold brick. My vision blurred, not from blood loss, but from something deeper, the disorienting sensation of my own life thread knitting itself wrong. Not healing, not mending, but rewiring. Twisting into new patterns that didn't belong to me. I could still see Harvey's thread glowing behind him, vibrant, endless, impossibly long, each branch flickering with trapped voices and stolen lifetimes. It pulsed like a warning. Like a promise. You shouldn't have touched mine, he said softly. But I suppose you didn't know what you were dealing with. I forced myself upright on trembling legs. Every movement felt like dragging a ghost behind me, the torn ends of my own thread scraping over the ground, trying to cling to me, trying not to fade. Harvey watched me with that same lopsided grin, but something in his eyes had shifted. The playful exhaustion I'd first seen was gone. What stared back at me now was older. Hungry. Patient in a way no human being ever could be. What are you? I rasped, clutching the alley wall. He seemed to consider the question, tilting his head like the answer was obvious but too complicated for my newly damaged mind. Call me an anomaly, he finally said. A mistake the universe didn't bother correcting. His fingers trailed up the edge of my jaw. A strange jolt rippled through me, like my remaining thread tightened instinctively, recoiling from his touch. I don't age, he continued. Don't fade. Don't die. Every thread I take becomes part of me. That's why mine is so long. That's why you heard them. The screaming, I whispered. The voices. He smiled, and for a second, I saw flashes, dozens, hundreds, of lives trapped behind him, woven together in that monstrous braid. They all live inside me now, he said. Some louder than others. Some more useful. I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing. The alley felt smaller, closing in, as if even the shadows were leaning in to listen. So why spare me? I forced out. Why let me live? Harvey blinked, genuinely surprised. I didn't spare you. The words dropped like stones into my chest. What do you mean? You think you're still you? His laugh echoed sharply. Look behind you. I froze. For a moment, I didn't want to obey. Didn't want to confirm the fear coiling in my gut. But the compulsion was stronger. Slowly, I turned. My life thread, what remained of it, was no longer stardust blue. No longer shimmering with the soft glow I'd known my entire life. Instead it was dark, thickened, pulsing with a faint orange ember that did not belong to me. The torn strands fused and knotted into unfamiliar shapes, branching out like roots searching for something to anchor into. It felt heavier. Hungrier. Wrong. Harvey stepped beside me, admiring it like a painter assessing a fresh stroke. You have a piece of me now, he murmured. Just like I have a piece of you. My breath caught. I don't want this, I said, stepping back from him, and from myself. Of course you don't, he replied cheerfully. They never do. He leaned in, voice a whisper laced with something ancient. But the thread does. A shudder crawled down my spine as something tugged inside me, something instinctive, primal, a pull toward him. Toward more. Toward taking instead of giving. It will get easier, Harvey said. Hunger always does. He turned away then, walking toward the mouth of the alley, his thread trailing behind him like a comet's tail. Before disappearing into the street-like glow, he glanced back at me. When you're ready for your first one, he said, nodding to my trembling hands, you'll know. The thread will show you. And then he was gone. The alley fell silent. The world resumed its normal rhythm. Cars passed. A siren wailed in the distance. Somewhere, a cat mewed. I stood alone, staring at the warped, darkened arc of my life thread as it pulsed once, slow and deliberate, like a second heartbeat. And I realized Harvey was right. It was hungry. And now? So was I.